Good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's the beginning of the hour, so we've got a lot to cover today. My name is Jennifer Morse. I am the Director of Product Evangelism here at MadCap Software. And today's session is a case study with the team at cleverbridge and their journey to a modern, responsive online help system with MadCap Flare. So, in supporting clients and internal users' use of its e-commerce platform, cleverbridge, which is a global subscription billing solutions provider, has placed a priority on delivering documentation via a modern web experience. And today, cleverbridge executes on that initiative with an intuitive HTML5-based help system that's very easy to navigate. And today, the team, which I'm going to introduce in a moment, is going to share an in-depth look at how cleverbridge uses MadCap Flare to deliver documentation through a modern web experience, integrating elements such as a beautiful top navigation design, things like drop-down texts, and other fun features which we'll take a look at. And so without further ado, I am so honored to have Julian Knoblauch, Peter Knauer, and Andrew Smith from cleverbridge to share how they solved their unique challenges and also provide best practices behind their success story. So before we start, just a few housekeeping items. If we want to move to the next slide. Thank you. This webinar will be recorded. So if you have to pop out early, not a problem. We're going to send an email out to everybody who signed up with a link to the recording afterward. The second thing I want to mention is there is a question panel in that GoToWebinar console that you're logged into. Feel free to drop in any questions there. We're going to do our best to get to what we can at the end of the session. Whatever we don't get to, feel free to keep asking those questions while that window's open. We'll send out a question and answer document to everybody at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. So we have a few folks joining us today, as I mentioned. So let's have everybody introduce themselves. Julianne, let's go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, hi, my name is Julianne, and I work as a technical writer at cleverbridge.
Hi, my name is Peter Knauer, and I'm front-end developer by cleverbridge.
Hi, and I'm Andrew Smith, and I also work as a technical writer at cleverbridge. Now, as Jennifer already mentioned, cleverbridge is an e-commerce company that basically handles subscription management for different types of companies around the world. We support these companies in various ways, mainly because selling things online is very, very difficult and requires companies to adhere to strict legal and compliance regulations. So we basically take over all of the responsibility of selling things online from these companies, and we provide a payment and subscription solution which allows companies to easily sell their products on the internet. Now, a little bit about cleverbridge before we move into our Flare website. As you can see, we're a small to mid-sized company, and since our founding in 2005, we've grown to nearly 300 employees in 5 offices around the world. Our main office is in Cologne, and that's where we're currently located today, and we have about 200 people here. We also have an office in Chicago with about 100 people, and we have smaller offices in San Francisco, Taipei, and Tokyo. Now, just a bit of information about cleverbridge. We've processed, as it shows here, more than 100 million orders worldwide since our founding in 2005, and we're very proud of that. Here are a few of our clients. You probably recognize some of these, and we've helped these clients succeed with various online ventures. A couple of years ago, for example, Sony Creative, which is the first client that you see here, needed to create a more effective online store to support their international transactions. And they also experienced a security breach in 2014 and needed basically additional data security measures. cleverbridge helped them with both of these endeavors and ensured that they were globally optimized from day one, so that they could focus on their business and not have to worry about online problems. Another company that you might have heard of is Malwarebytes. And Malwarebytes, in a similar way to Sony, found themselves struggling with subscription renewals for their premium anti-malware software line. And we basically helped them with a win-back campaign, which increased their renewal rate by 69% over this time. So we're very proud about that. And we'll move on to the next slide.
Great, thank you, Andrew. So Julianne, how were you managing all of your content before you started working with Flare? What were some of the pain points that you struggled with?
Yeah, so when Andrew and I started with cleverbridge, Flare had already been introduced, and all of the content was in Flare. But there was no online help, only a large number of PDF targets. So for us as technical writers, the publication process was very tedious. We created the PDF files with Flare and then had to upload them manually to different locations. First, a custom-built website for clients. You can see this website on the slide. And second, a SharePoint library for employees in our intranet. Our clients and employees also struggled with the documentation. To begin with, people didn't know where to look for docs because the documentation landscape was so fragmented. If they found the old client support center, what you see here on the slide, they had to have their credentials ready because it was login protected. And then if they managed to log in, they had trouble finding information because the content wasn't well structured, there was no search, etc. So basically, not many people use this website. Often, our client support managers would send PDF files to clients by email, and these PDF files were then sitting on computers and become outdated. So you can see there was a lot of pain.
Yeah, and so tell us a little bit about what type of content you're currently delivering with MadCap Flare now.
Yeah, ta-da! So on this slide, you can see our new documentation solution. It is still called the Client Support Center, but besides the name, it has nothing in common with the old solution. Maybe you recognize the layout. It is a customized HTML5 top navigation output. We completely ditched the PDF files, and nobody has complained about this so far. Currently, we're working on integrating the HTML output into our desktop application, but I'll touch upon this a little bit later in the webinar. In terms of content, we deliver a getting started guide. You can see it here in the navigation, in the top navigation, and user guides for our e-commerce platform. They're under using the platform. And our audience, it consists both of business users and developers. The help website also includes a changelog and a few PDF forms that are created outside of Flare and copied into the Flare project.
Very good. So, Andrew, let's kind of turn to you. Tell us how MadCap Flare has been helping you and some of the other writers at the company to create and publish content more efficiently.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's basically helped us in a variety of ways, but you can boil them down to three main ways in which this has helped us out. First of all, the publication process is much easier and faster now, as Juliana just mentioned. Before we had the top navigation web help, we were publishing PDFs, and this involved a very tedious process of uploading the PDFs to various platforms, and it was very prone to errors and problems as a result of that. Now we basically have a publication day every 2 weeks, and you can see from our changelog here that we publish new information on a regular basis. It's also worth noting that the review process is much easier now than it used to be. Previously, we had to send the PDFs per email to our subject matter experts and individuals like that. But now we have a development environment where we publish content for reviews, and people can simply go on a web browser and view the content that we intend to publish on the next publication day and send us feedback regarding that. It's also very beneficial to have the development environment because it allows us to find bugs that might be in the Flare project as a result of JavaScript or other things that we've implemented. Last but not least, it's really helped us to have more transparency, and we'll get into this a little bit later on, and to gather feedback much easier as well, mainly because the documents are more easily accessible to all of our to our customers, to our users, and to the individuals that have an interest in our documentation. And this has allowed us to improve our documentation substantially.
Wonderful. So kind of moving on with that, or that theme, talk to us about some of the lessons and some of the best practices that you've learned while creating this modern top navigation site with Flare.
Yeah, well, we've identified several best practices that we adopted throughout the process of building this site. And it's worth noting the process took about a year to do. So there were lots of trial and error during this period. And some of these best practices we adopted on purpose, and others were simply coincidental. But looking back, all of them are practices that we definitely benefited from, and we would recommend to anyone looking to begin a similar project. Now, the first best practice that we identified, which is displayed here on this slide, is basically laying out the information architecture for the site in a mind mapping tool or in some other tool that allows you to really display the information and rearrange it and figure out the best way that you can organize the information before inserting it into Flare. And once we developed this information with the mind mapping tool, we worked with a consultant who advised us on various ways that we could make this even better. We constructed a goal-based navigation, which Juliana will go into a little bit later on. And workshops with our customer support team help us to even greater define these goals and to make the information architecture even better as a result of that. So I would definitely recommend creating a very good information architecture before you start with the project. One of the things that we also discussed with the consultant was how to best present our content for the different users that we have, because it's a variety of individuals that actually access our content, that have an interest in our content, and they use our platform. And at cleverbridge, we basically boiled it down to two types of individuals that have a strong interest in our documentation, namely business users, so people that don't have a strong technical background, but have an interest in the business expectations or business capabilities of our platform. And the second one is developers. And we also decided through our brainstorming at the beginning that we didn't want to publish content on the internet for, or some of our content for everyone, because there could be compliance or security issues for us or for our clients if we did that. So our consultant basically helped us decide on the best way to deal with this. And what you see here on this slide is the solution. Basically that we would create 6 different outputs using MadCap Flare and basically allow the users to navigate between them. And the 6 different outputs were basically you could access additional content by logging in. And that brings us to the next best practice that we adopted, was namely allowing our users to easily navigate between these different outputs, because it's one thing to have the outputs, another thing to allow this to be something that the users can easily access. And we instituted 2 ways for the users to navigate between these outputs. The first one, which you can see here on the slide, is this little drop-down window, which allows the users to basically switch between the business user content and the developer content. And we also have a login button, which allows the users to switch to the restricted content, which, as I mentioned before, we didn't want to publish directly on the internet due to legal and compliance reasons. Another best practice that we identified was really related to how many levels we want to create in our website, because one of the issues that we dealt with very early on, and I'm sure as you saw from the mind map, was that we had a lot of content, and we needed to decide what the best way to organize that was, what the best way to give our users access to that was. In a previous help center, we had lots and lots of different levels. Sometimes you could go up to 10 levels down to access content, and we wanted to avoid that this time around to make it easier for our users to access things. So what we basically decided on with the help of our consultant was to limit our navigation to 4 levels down. So basically from the top level to the bottom level, you would have no more than 4 levels. And the only reason we were able to do this was because of the drop-down functionality that the top navigation feature in Flare, or the top navigation output in Flare allowed us to utilize. You can see an example of that here. So this would be our fourth level, creating the best URL for your business. But then under that, you have various drop-downs which allow you to access more content. And this was extremely beneficial for us to keep this four-level goal. And it was also capable, or we were able to do this because we basically reused content through snippets.
Hi, here's Peter. I came to this project a little bit later. At that point, Juliana and Andrew has already implemented the default Flare theme and updated some colors to fit our company colors. Here you can see the first mockup plus some customization in the header area. These are login link and audience dropdown. I didn't have any experience with Flare before I started with this project. I didn't know what kind of software it was and what you can do with it. So I started with the mockups without thinking about is what I'm doing technically possible to implement in Flare or not. But we worked well as a team, and also I have experience in web design, so I was pretty sure that we could handle it. So next slide. So here you can see our early version of the homepage. We updated it a little bit later, but for the implementation start, it was already good enough. We did also mockups for the content page, site navigation, tables, and much more elements we could have in the documentation. I did everything in Photoshop, layout, images, icons, and drop-downs. Without such a professional graphic software, it's difficult to create good mockups. After the design was ready, we started with a technical implementation. In the beginning, we thought that it could be enough to create mockups and the technical writers could implement everything themselves in Flare. But the complexity of the project showed us that without experience in web design, it's very difficult to do this. So in the end, it was a perfect decision to separate our work. Julian and Andrew were working on the structure of the project, added new content, did all the other organizational work and other stuff, and I took over the design part, did the styling, prepared images and customization with JavaScript. Here's our page with JavaScript, and now I turn the JavaScript off, so you can see that its design is a little bit broken. Sometimes it was difficult for us to place an element in a certain position on the page. So we used JavaScript to manipulate the HTML output and moved the elements where we wanted to have them. For example, the footer. By default, the footer was inside the content area, the main selection. It was not a problem on the main page, but on the content page. Here's a page with JavaScript, and on the next slide is JavaScript turned off. The content has a maximum width, but the footer should have the full width. So we moved, for example, footer through JavaScript outside of the content area. Some other points to mention are drop-down menus on the home page. We added model pop-up window with JavaScript and added banner on the top of the page. There are just a couple of examples what can be done with the page structure using JavaScript. But important to mention is that JavaScript slows down the loading time of the page. Once I began implementing the design, I also had to work with the CSS feature in Flare. For the web designer, it's normally faster to write his own CSS, but Flare comes with its own CSS, and I didn't want to duplicate any of the CSS styles because this could cause problems down the road. Therefore, I decided to change the styles directly in Flare. To help me to do this, I use a developer tool, which can be found in Google Chrome and Firefox also. and which you can see here on the right side. This allowed me to quickly find the styles that I needed to change, preview the changes, and thereafter quickly locate them and change them in Flare. Trying to do this manually by slowly changing the styles in the Flare UI, building the output, and then repeating this process would have taken too long. Okay.
Yeah, another best practice from our side is to conduct user tests early on in the project. Basically, you should start testing when you have a prototype of the website. We didn't start testing until the website was almost finished. This was simply because we didn't have any knowledge about user testing and only read up on the subject at that time. A very useful book for us was Rocket Surgery Made Easy by Steve Krug. You may have heard of him. He's a very famous web usability expert in the US, but better late than never. So here's what we did. First, we identified the main goals that the users of the help website have. For example, a prospect of cleverbridge would want to get an overview of the APIs. Second, for each goal, we formulated a task that would show us whether our users would be able to achieve these goals on the website. The corresponding task for the API goal I just mentioned was get a list of all APIs that Cleverbridge offers. We then conducted 1-hour tests with participants that represented our audience well. So we chose 2 colleagues, 2 clients, and 1 prospect. Some tests took place in person and others through video conferencing with screen sharing. And this worked surprisingly well. We recorded all tests so that we could evaluate them afterwards. During the test, we tried to stick to our script and not talk too much. We focused on observing the participants instead. The results of the tests were very interesting. What we noticed was that most participants struggled with the same things. So on the homepage, which you can see on this slide, the tiles, yeah, they're here, getting started using the platform, etc. They originally linked to additional content, such as our changelog and other stuff. And most users, they would click on a tile right away and completely ignore the top navigation. Therefore, we simply blended out the top navigation. You can see here there is no top navigation on the homepage, and use the tiles to link to the navigation items. So yeah, the tiles are our top navigation on the homepage. Something else we noticed during the tests was that some users were unsure how they could use the search on the website. For example, can I also search for a phrase by putting question marks around it, like in Google? That was, yeah, one of the questions of the users. What we did is we added a search tips at the start of the search results page. You can see them on this slide. They explain the search methods you can use: full text search, phrase search, Boolean operators, how the search filter works, and that we use American spelling. We have our Flare project stored in Git, so a very modern source control system. This enables us to work together on the docs as a team. Similarly to many development teams here at Cleverbridge, we have a master branch, a development branch, and feature branches. We use the master branch only for publishing the website to the live server, so we never work on this branch. Yeah, the branches, you can see them here in this Git editor. The development branch is where we make changes or additions to the docs. This is the branch that we work on during our 2-week sprints. And for larger documentation tasks, we also create feature branches, which we merge into the development branch when the task is finished, because we won't know when these tasks are finished, so we create these feature branches. We didn't start working with Git until shortly before the go live of the website, though. At the beginning, we stored the Flare project on a file server and created backups manually. And this also worked fine. The reason was that the structure of the project and also the file names changed a lot during the implementation phase. And we assumed that this would cause many merge conflicts. And I think we're through with our best practices now.
Yeah, great. So Andrew, tell us a little bit about some of the other MadCap software products you all are using. How are they helping you all in your workflow?
Yeah, well, thus far, we've only incorporated 2 additional MadCap software products, which you can see here. But they've helped us a lot with our workflow. First of all, Capture. We have a lot of screenshots, and this tool allows us to edit our screenshots very easily. And it allows us to capture and edit screenshots and graphics in various forms, and to save all of the changes that we make to them in props files, which has proven very beneficial because we can go back and have access to the original version of the image at a later point. Another product that we use currently on our publication days for quality assurance and just to make sure there's no broken links, etc., is MadCap Analyzer. Basically, before we publish every 2 weeks, we open MadCap Analyzer and check for any critical issues in the product, or in the output. And this basically saves us the time of having to manually go through the links, check them, make sure all the links are working properly, etc. And it really enhances the quality of the help content in a variety of ways.
And yeah, and I'd like to add too that it's great that you brought up Analyzer, because for everybody on the call and for those who are considering using Flare, the good news is we just released Flare 2018 yesterday, and one of the things we did is we folded MadCap Analyzer into Flare. So when you're using Flare, you have all of the benefits of Analyzer from within the tool. Not that it was difficult to use before, but now you don't have to launch another tool to use it. It comes with Flare and it's integrated right into the interface. So had to say that. But anyway, so now that you've migrated to Flare, Andrew, tell us a little bit about some of the benefits you've realized as a team of content authors, and also what kind of feedback have you received from not only your internal stakeholders, but your customers as well?
Yeah, well, as content authors, and I've already mentioned this previously, but it's so much easier to publish content now. And we can, one of the things that Flare allows us to do is to simply edit table of contents, move content around, change the location of content, etc. And that's very helpful for us. We can also reorganize topics very quickly through snippets and dropdowns, which I went into previously. In terms of the feedback that we've received from internal stakeholders and customers, well, internal stakeholders, first of all, have really praised us for the fact that they can find content very easily now, and it's also helped us a lot because they can identify holes in the docs that we have very quickly and tell us about that so we can improve the documentation much quicker than we could in the past. It's also much easier for our internal stakeholders because they work a lot with our customers, and they can send the links to the content to customers and also to prospects that we have at the company. When they have questions about our applications and about our products, and that saves them a lot of time, and they've been really pleased about that. They're also very pleased that the documentation is a lot more attractive now than it previously was when it was purely in PDF form. And we've also received that feedback directly from our external customers as well. They really like the modern look and feel of the website. However, that's one of the issues we also need to work on, is collecting feedback from external users. Currently, we don't have direct lines of contact to a lot of the individuals that use the website outside of our company, and this is something that we need to gain access to. However, as you can see from this slide here, we do make a lot of use of Google Analytics, and for example, if we see that one of our external users is searching for a term and they don't have any hits, they can't find content related to that term, then we know, okay, we need to create help content for that. So that has been very beneficial.
And so tell us a little bit about your next steps. So Julianne, what sorts of things are you planning going forward?
Yes, we're working on another project. cleverbridge offers a Windows application that our clients use to integrate with the e-commerce platform. It is called the Commerce Assistant. You can see it on the slide. This application has built-in help features, and we are currently evaluating how to replace these help features with content generated from Flare. When a user clicks on help in the menu, a help viewer window opens, as you can see here. And we want to add this content to Flare and send users who click on help to our client support center on the internet instead. So the application has to open the Client Support Center website in the user's browser. We expect this part of the project to be pretty straightforward. The Commerce Assistant also has a dynamic help feature, which you can see here on the right. The content in the window pane changes based on the user's actions in the application on the left. So whenever the user changes something, the content will adapt itself. And since our users really like this help feature, we want the user experience to remain exactly the same and only make changes in the back end. We are planning to move the dynamic help content to Flare and generate a skinless HTML5 output, which is published to a web server. And when a user opens a user interface window in the application, the corresponding help topic is called from the web server. For hooking user interface windows and help topics to each other, we plan to use Flare's context-sensitive help features, so create an alias file, assign identifiers to the screens, create a header file, and so on. To implement this part of the project, we need support from our development team, and we're currently working on a proof of concept with them. And now back to you, Jennifer.
Wonderful. Well, Julianne, Peter, Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time to walk us through all this today. This was a great information. A few questions are coming in. I'd encourage you all, if you have any questions in terms of what we just went through, jot them down in that questions area there and GoToWebinar. We'll get to some of those in just a moment. I just want to remind everybody that you can take advantage of a discount for participating in this webinar today if you're interested in signing up for some of our upcoming training classes. So if you're interested in taking your Flare CSS skills to the next level, or some of your single sourcing techniques within Flare to the next level, check out these 2 training classes coming up. Our modules that we cover in each class is available online, so drop us a line if you have any questions about them or registering, but you do get $100 off each one for registering today. The other reminder that I want to share with everybody is we have our 2 learning conferences coming up. MADWORLD is fast approaching. We have our conference here in San Diego, June 3rd through the 6th at the beautiful Hotel del Coronado on Coronado Island here in San Diego. And then we also have our, this year we're doing another conference in Europe, in Prague. And so we'll be there September 11th through the 14th. And we're really excited to go. So if you haven't registered yet, check out our website, the schedule, the presenters, everything's online. We have an amazing panel of speakers and educators lined up, not to mention 2 amazing venues, and we hope to see you all there in either San Diego or in Prague. So, couple things I want to get to here. We've got some questions coming in, and let's take a look. Here's a great question. Do you all use metadata to improve your search? We didn't talk too much about that. Maybe you can touch on that if you do, or what you're doing there.
We do use metadata, but not, we use that primarily for internal purposes and not to improve our search. So unfortunately, we can't contribute a lot to that.
Okay.
What we do use is we have assigned keywords to certain topics, I think, to improve the findability. I don't know whether that would count as metadata.
I mean, we do use I guess the main thing that we do use in terms of optimizing the search is we use the synonyms function in Flare.
Oh, yeah, that's
and so basically, a lot of the words that our company uses are not necessarily what the world uses for specific topics. So, for example, we have we call all of our customers clients, and a lot of people in the world call I'll call customers customers. So we basically have created a synonym for words like that to make sure that even if we don't use a particular word within one of our help topics, and therefore nobody will be able to find it through a direct search, they can at least find synonyms for it if they use the search function.
Okay, great. Question, I think this would be directed to Peter. What was the name again of the tool for real-time editing CSS and seeing results right away?
It's a developer tool. By pressing F12 on the keyboard, you will see directly it's on the right side or under the browser window.
In Google Chrome.
And in Google Chrome and Firefox and Internet Explorer, it says the same F12 keyboard on the keyboard.
Right, and yeah, so that allows you to select elements on the page, correct? So you can see there on that panel what's going on.
Yeah, you can select elements in the HTML output and see directly what the CSS parameters it has. And you can just click in CSS parameters and change colors, for example, font size, or just other parameters, put the borders or background colors and see it. And you see also in which CSS file it's located, on which line.
Right. And the CSS properties that you're adjusting, they're the same CSS properties that you could find in Flare. I think what you were pointing out, Peter, the benefit though is that when you put them in, it's almost like the web page is rendering them right away. You get a quick spot check to see, well, how does that little CSS tweak affect my page without having to build everything?
Right.
Yeah, very helpful for folks. That's a great question. Do you run into any issues conducting subject matter expert reviews with online help files? Do you have a way to track reviewer feedback comparable to shared review in Acrobat or check changes in Word? So maybe touch a little bit on your SME process.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned previously, we have two servers basically. We have one server for we call it our development server, and that's where we publish all content that we want to have reviewed by our SMEs. And then we have our server where people can access the content online. Currently, what we do is we build the content on our development server, and then we send a link to the content that we want reviewed directly to the individuals that we want to review from. Now, since it's in a browser, at least I'm not familiar if there is any way, but there's no we don't get, they don't comment directly into the topic that they're reading. Typically, what we request is that they send us an email with any sort of suggestions related to the information. But we thought it was very important to send the SMEs the file through a browser, or I mean the information through a link, because it really replicates the look and feel that our end users will have when they go on the website. So that's the reason we chose to do it in that way.
Yeah. And it's interesting, you know, I know when we were prepping for this wasn't available, but just as I mentioned, we released yesterday, another option for folks to consider too is you can now send those topic reviews to SMEs in a browser so they can comment them in the topic itself using Central. So you don't have to install anything anymore, which is kind of fun. I don't mean to take away and plug my webinar next week, guys, but if anybody's interested in that as an alternative, you could also use MadCap Central as a way to get SME reviews on your topics, you know, get those comments and edits, but do it all in a browser using a secure link. So another option there. But again, we didn't have that a few weeks ago when we were prepping for this, so. Another question here about Analyzer. What are all the features available as part of Analyzer? And maybe we could take this as a two-parter. Maybe you guys could touch a little bit on, you touched a little bit on it on the slides. Are there certain metrics or suggestions that you guys run often, aside from maybe the critical ones, like what's broken, what do I need to fix? Are there other ones that you kind of go to?
Unfortunately, I know that Analyzer can help you a lot to improve the quality of your project, but so far we've just actually used it to detect critical issues, so broken links or variables that may not be set and stuff like that. Yeah, that's on in our backlog to improve our project. Yeah.
Yeah, Analyzer, I always describe it as the most your favorite QA team member that you don't have to pay. So Analyzer does a lot of things. You touched on some of the biggies, Julianne, but some of the others that to maybe play with and consider is it runs a lot of suggestive reports. It looks for things like text in your topics that match variables in your project, right? Variables and snippets, these are great reusable pieces in Flare, and Analyzer helps ensure that you're reusing as much content as possible. So if you have some text that matches your variables in your Flare project and you didn't use the variables, maybe you hand typed the text rather, Analyzer finds those things and it will suggest, hey, I found all of these instances of this text string that matches a variable. Maybe you've got 100 instances of them. And it will let you convert that text to a variable with one click of a button. So little things like that can save a lot of cleanup time. Also, it looks for phrases that matches your snippets and it allows you to convert them to snippet text that matches your project. So like I said, it's a wonderful member of your QA team that you don't have to pay, and it can save you a lot of time when you're optimizing your Flare project. We actually have a lot of webinars on Analyzer, and perhaps we can send that out as a resource and you can review that, or drop me a line directly and I'm happy to go over it with you. So any other questions from the group here? No? Okay, well, we'll keep this open for just a second. I want to again thank my guests for joining us today. This was so informative. Appreciate you taking the time. It was great. I hope you all enjoyed it. And again, we hope to see you on some of our upcoming webinars. We've just posted a handful that are coming up for the rest of the month, including some overviews on what's new in Flare and Central. And we hope to see you all there. So again, thank you for the team at cleverbridge, and thanks everybody for joining me today. I hope to see you on our next presentation. So take care, everybody. Thank you again.
Take care.
Bye.